Russia has been attacking Ukraine's energy sector again. The strikes have caused emergency power outages in a number of regions, including the capital, Kyiv, and its surrounding region. Explosions were heard in the city of Rivne in the country's west and in the outskirts of the city of Cherkasy. That's according to Ukraine's public broadcaster. It followed strikes on Odessa that damaged the port and a ship there. Air raid alerts were activated in almost all regions of the country, with Ukraine's Air Force warning of the launch of hundreds of drones. Well, for the very latest on the situation in Ukraine, we can cross now to our special correspondent, Nimisha Jaiswal in Kyiv. Nimisha, tell us more about these latest attacks and the impact they're having on Ukraine's energy supply.
Well, Terry, as you mentioned, the attacks focused on the western regions of Ukraine as well as the central regions. There were attacks across Rivne, Cherkasy, blasts heard in Zhytomyr for a second night in a row. And the port of Odessa was targeted as well. Ukraine's energy provider, Ukrenergo, has put out an announcement saying that there will be emergency power outages, but their rescue and emergency workers will go in and start fixing things as soon as possible to get power back on track, to get a pattern going again. But Ukrenergo and emergency workers have gotten used to these repeated attacks over the last few months, as have the people of Ukraine. They're only getting power partially. I just want to show you something. This is a screenshot from a colleague behind the camera, and he said that today there were power outages for half the time in Kyiv, but now there are going to be extra outages thanks to these attacks. You can hear a generator perhaps behind me. This is just live here in Ukraine now, and the pattern of assaults on the country continues.
Now, Ukraine's port city of Odessa, as you mentioned, it's been hit again. It's been targeted repeatedly in the recent weeks. What's behind the focus on Odessa?
Well, there's definitely a strategic importance to Odessa, and it's come into focus especially right now thanks to the fact that Moscow and Putin himself has said that he intends to cut off Ukraine from the Black Sea as a result of the attacks Ukraine has carried out on Russia's shadow fleet. Now, we must remember that Odessa is becoming an increasingly important port, also thanks to the fact that Ukraine has been cut off from the ports of Kherson and Zaporizhia thanks to Russian occupation near there. And Ukraine continues, despite the war, to be a crucial grain provider. So it does depend on these grain supplies going out. One senior Ukrainian official going so far as saying that the focus of the war seems to now be shifting to Odessa.
Now, these attacks, they come just days after the U.S. hosted peace talks involving both Ukraine and Russia. How do these attacks fit in with that context, Nimisha?
Unfortunately, Terry, both the ongoing peace talks and the ongoing attacks seem to be dancing around each other. It's an ongoing pattern yet again, because even though some positive noises were made after the Ukrainian and American officials meeting, U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff saying that they're aligning their peace points, the 20 peace points that Europe and Ukraine has proposed. But Russia immediately shutting this down. Russian officials were there as well, but there was no readout after their conversations with the US, them saying that that Europe is derailing this peace process, that they are being paranoid, that Russia is prepared to offer a legal statement saying they have no intention to attack Europe. But in the past patterns of Russia, if that's anything to go by, those legal documents cannot be trusted. Also, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, as well as the US, proposed a peace over Christmas time here in Ukraine, which Russia has rejected. It says that it does not want to give Ukraine time to recoup. And that's why Zelensky has said that Ukraine must be prepared for more attacks in the coming days.
Nimisha, thank you very much. That was DW's Nimisha Jaiswal in Kyiv. Well, attacking Russia's energy grid has become Ukraine's energy grid has become Russia's trademark tactic every winter since the war began. After a previous wave of strikes, DW correspondent Nick Connolly visited a power station put out of action.
The workers at this power station have seen it all before. Between their company's two sites, they've dealt with over 200 attacks since the war began.
Recovering an entire power station like the one behind me in its entirety in concrete just isn't realistic, and it's also not very likely to work, given that Russia has proven that it is willing to spend millions of dollars on ballistic missiles that are able to break through the best conventional defences.
It's been over a week since the attack when we visit. These workers are still trying to assess the extent of the damage and save any equipment that may have survived. What makes these attacks so devastating is that most of the equipment can't readily be replaced.
Most of this equipment was produced during the Soviet period. We get help from other countries that also used to be part of the Soviet Union, particularly the Baltic countries. They've sent us very valuable kit in the past. Unfortunately, that was also destroyed in the last attack. Our problem is that modern equipment doesn't match our systems, and even if it can be used here, would be waiting too long for delivery. Right now, we're taking apart everything we have left, and we're trying to put together a few functioning power units.
That means salvaging parts from many damaged power units to build a handful of improvised working replacements. The power company CEO tells us the only hope of preventing repeat attacks is more and better air defense systems.
Many people didn't believe we'd be able to rebuild after the attacks in 2024. But we did, and we got through that winter against all the odds. Here, there are air raids that often last 12 to 18 hours, and somehow our workers still manage to do their jobs.
So he and Alexei were on duty the night of the most recent attack.
We can't leave the equipment unattended. We have to be there. Everyone else goes to the shelter during air raid alerts, but we can't do that.
One of the missiles hit just 30 meters away from where they were working. This attack, they tell us, came just as they'd almost finished repairs on the plant from a previous strike in 2024.
We usually work nights. That's why we're the ones who are always there for the attacks. We've seen so many that we can tell if it's a Shahed drone, a cruise missile or a ballistic missile just by the blast wave.
Less than 2 weeks after the last strike, said he, Alexei and their colleagues are back at work, trying to provide people across Ukraine with at least a few hours of power a day this winter.